What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we have got our Week 12 NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. You know the drill by now. If you enjoy the content, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Join the free newsletter, get early exclusive content, become a member, get personalized fantasy advice, all the details in the description. But for now, let's get right into it. We kick things off on Thursday Night Football with the divisional clash between the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. And this honestly might be our most meaningful Thursday night game to date this season because both teams tied at 6-4, and you'd expect the winner to take a stronghold of the division, potentially finish first, while the loser might be fighting it out for a non-guaranteed wild card spot. Now, obviously, the first time these two teams played, the Colts won in Indy. And I said it back then, I'll say it again. This series has split written all over it, with the home team getting the slight advantage, which makes sense here as the spread is -3.5 for the Texans. And you probably already have guessed it. I'm going to go with the Texans here, but let's look more closely at why. First and foremost, the Indianapolis Colts. Last week, big loss of Marlon Mack, but the good news for them is with that dominant offensive line, they should be able to have success with whatever rusher they plug in there, which we saw versus the Jaguars. Now, they are expected to get Ebron T.Y. Hilton back, but I would expect both those guys to be somewhat limited, particularly T.Y. Hilton. So health-wise, I do think the Texans get the slight advantage. Will Fuller going to be returning for them as well. Offensively, I give the slight edge to Deshaun Watson over Brissett because Brissett last week was his first week back from injury, and short week, only 4 days in between games. Is Brissett going to be at 100%? Sure, last week versus the Jaguars, he didn't have to do all that much, but if he goes down versus the Texans, is he going to be able to put the team on his back passing-wise? Now, I will say the Texans' defense can be had, but right now, I just think Deshaun Watson a little bit healthier than Jacoby Brissett, so advantage Texans there. And on top of this, if this is a close game, which I do envision, I think it's going to be very tight heading into the fourth quarter with both teams having a chance to win it. Do you have any faith in the Colts kicking situation with how inconsistent Adam Vinatieri has been? To me, that is another strike against the Colts. Advantage Houston Texans. To me, this has about 3 or 4 point margin of victory written all over it. I like the Texans at home outright, but on the spread, I gotta go with the Colts here. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off the upset, but ever so slight advantage to the Texans, but the Colts on the spread all day long. Next, we've got another divisional clash between the Tampa Bay Bucks at the Atlanta Falcons. The Bucks at 3-7, coming off a loss versus the New Orleans Saints that, we kind of saw coming. No shot the Saints were going to lose 2 in a row. And the Bucks, they put up some type of a fight, but ultimately too many interceptions by Jameis Winston. We've seen it before. We'll continue to see it again. And I anticipate it might be a storyline this week versus the Falcons. Then, speaking of the Falcons, they're 3-7, coming off another huge divisional win, this time over the Panthers. And some credit to us, we said, don't be surprised if the Falcons pull off the upset last week, and we absolutely loved them on the spread in Week 11. Hopefully you picked them there. And this week, it's kind of a similar situation. The Falcons at home outright, that's the safer pick. That's the smarter pick. On the spread, -4.5. Maybe not as confident as last week, but if I'm picking one of these two teams on the spread, it's going to be the Falcons, because even though I think that both these offenses are absolutely electric and they'll probably put up a lot of points and keep it somewhat close to begin with, at the end of the game, who do you think is the safer play at the quarterback position and is less turnover prone? To me, that's Matt Ryan. Right now, Jameis Winston is pretty much leading the NFL in terms of interceptions and turnovers in general. I think that trend continues. That's what happens when you have this type of air it out offense, that you just continue to take shots. But, advantages do come with that. Guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Howard Brate can all go ahead and blow up. But will this Falcons revitalized defense be able to make it 3 weeks in a row? maybe they won't be able to completely shut down Jameis Winston. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if in a key moment, Winston commits a turnover and the Falcons are able to distance themselves. Now, this rush defense of the Bucs might be the difference maker because I don't think the Falcons are going to get really much going on the ground. So Matt Ryan is really going to have to put this game on his shoulders. Ridley, Julio Jones are going to be the guys that are going to be running wild in the secondary because the Bucs can absolutely be exposed there. So I see really big games for both those guys. The point total, I think, here is going to be a high one. And if you're looking at the total points, I'd probably take the over pretty easily there. But like I said before, Falcons outright is the safer choice at this point in time. On the spread, -4.5. I think it'll be close throughout, but then the Falcons pull away late, so I will take them on the spread as well. Next, we've got the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. The Broncos 3-7 almost got the huge victory over the Minnesota Vikings. That game pretty much went down exactly as we predicted. The Broncos came out firing. They had a lead for a while, but ultimately couldn't come back late in that game in the fourth quarter with just a couple of seconds left. But they did cover on the spread. They really haven't been in all that many blowout losses. Then the Buffalo Bills, 7-3, absolutely took care of business versus the Dolphins as Josh Allen had one of the best games of his young career. And to nobody's shock, now they've got a tough contest, even though it's in Buffalo versus this Broncos team that has been stingy. Brendan Allen has been all right at the quarterback position, somewhat surprisingly. And I think this is going to be a low-scoring, hard-fought game where it would not shock me at all if the Bills lose here, which is why I'm going to take the Broncos on the spread because, like we said before, the Broncos haven't been in all that many blowout losses, while the Bills, you look at their record, you almost have to throw it out because how many impressive victories have there been in there versus good actual opponents? Not all that many, and the Broncos can be a pain in your neck. They've got a good defense, especially in the secondary, so I do believe Josh Allen will come back down to earth here, but I'll give the ever so slight advantage to the Bills' offense just because of the dual threat abilities of Josh Allen. And to me, ultimately, I do believe that will be the slight difference. So I will take kind of begrudgingly the Bills outright. But on the spread, I absolutely love the Broncos as the Bills are at -4.5. I think this will probably be a 3 to 4 point margin of victory if the Bills do win. But again, real chance the Broncos pull this one out. So Broncos on the spread. Moving on, we've got the New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. The Giants 2-8 coming off the bye week, while the Chicago Bears 4-6, losing to the LA Rams last week on Sunday night, as that was pretty much the end of their playoff hopes. Not that they were really alive to begin with, considering the play of Mitch Trubisky. And speaking of Trubisky, man, oh man, the Bears have a situation in their hands. That phantom or quote-unquote phantom injury, that hip stinger that was suffered late in the fourth quarter that was the reason why Trubisky was pulled in favor of Chase Daniel. But then a lot of people questioning, was it real, was it not? Why would Matt Nagy do that at that point in time? Just creating so much unnecessary controversy. But to his credit, Matt Nagy has said, if healthy, Trubisky is the unquestioned starter. And right now, it's somewhat trending in the direction that Trubisky plays. But if not, man, oh man, talk about deja vu, because last year these two teams squared off. Trubisky was injured, and insert Chase Daniel pretty much in a similar situation. Now, I will say, this Giants team not as good offensively. Daniel Jones, even though he's brought, a nice little spark to this squad, he has a lot of issues with turnovers. Obviously, no more Odell Beckham. For the Chicago Bears on that side, well, offensively, they're not the same type of team. Defensively, they're still good, but not as elite as last year, suffering some injuries. So what can we expect from this game? Well, I do think we're going to see a Chicago Bears win. Let's start off with that because, like I said before, I think Daniel Jones extremely turnover prone, which this Bears defense should be able to capitalize on, and the Bears are going to have to ride their defense to this victory. but favorably speaking, the Giants' defense can be had. So I'd expect a whole lot of David Montgomery, potentially Tariq Cohen, especially if Trubisky isn't in this game. And even if he is, probably going to be a lot of handoffs to protect him and his health. But either way, I do think that will be enough. I think this will probably be a lower scoring game. Neither of these offenses are elite. Trubisky, don't get me started on him as a quarterback, is someone that you can rely on. I've been saying it all year. We know where I stand on that. People finally coming around to that, but a little too late. So as bad as the Bears have been offensively, as questionable as the play calling has been, I think you have to give them the edge here at home versus a turnover-prone rookie quarterback versus a beatable defense. Is Sterling Shepard going to play or not? I don't think it matters all that much. This Bears secondary has been really good against pass catchers. It's going to be really on the ground where if they can stop Saquon Barkley, then they might get a really dominant victory here. The way I see this is it's either going to be a blowout win for the Bears or it's going to be a very close win for them, as in 2 to 3 points. I think it's probably going to be that close victory. We haven't really seen a blowout win for the Bears, and with good reason. They're just not that great of a team this year. So the spread, -6.5, a little bit too high, in fact. Even though I like the Bears outright, I am taking the Giants on the spread all day long. Continuing on, we have got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals divisional clash. The Steelers at 5-5, the Bengals at 0-10. Both teams coming off of losses. For the Steelers, wow, talk about a storyline here. The helmet swing heard across the world. Mason Rudolph almost got his head caved in by one Myles Garrett with no time left in that game. But that's taken away from the fact that the Steelers didn't look all that great. Mason Rudolph, again, reminds us that he is not a good quarterback. And unless they come out with a lead, and if they have to come from behind, the Steelers are in serious trouble. Now, on top of that, they will be without some offensive linemen here stemming from the Myles Garrett incident. So keep an eye out on that. For the Cincinnati Bengals at 0-10, tough loss versus the Raiders, but the ironic thing is they looked better than the Steelers last week as they kind of hung tough with the Raiders. And I could see them doing it again here versus the Steelers. The spread at +6.5, not quite a touchdown, but it's a divisional clash. If there was ever a time for the Bengals to potentially upset someone and get their first win, I would say it's here. We know what's going to happen. There's going to be the Joe Mixon show pretty much. For the Steelers, also, no Juju Smith-Schuster. That's the expectation. This offense is going to be limited, potentially no James Conner as well. So watch out. Obviously, I do think the Steelers have the advantage, especially speaking on defensive sides of the football, because the Bengals absolutely atrocious. While the Steelers did have a down game last week versus the Browns, but I do think they bounce back here. Still, I think this will be a lower scoring game, something like 17-14, 17-10. I think the spread is going to be very close here. And I don't know why, but I think the Bengals can go ahead and cover here. Right now, I think there's just a huge circus surrounding both the Steelers and the Browns because of all the shenanigans from last week. Mason Rudolph, we know he's not a good quarterback. I mean, to the Bengals' credit, neither is Finley, so they've got that going for them. It's a wash there. The Steelers limited offensively, a lot of injuries to the pass catchers, to the running backs, suspensions on the offensive line. I'm telling you, this is going to come down to the defense. They're going to have to shoulder the load for the Steelers. We've seen them do it before, but are they going to be able to do it consistently here throughout this game? I wouldn't be shocked if they do. That's why I like the Steelers outright. No doubts about that. But the Bengals on the spread, like I said before, if there was ever a game for them to kind of stay in it and give the other team a scare, it's this one. I'm going to go ahead and take the Bengals on the spread. Next up, we've got the Miami Dolphins at the aforementioned Cleveland Browns. The Dolphins 2-8, coming off a loss versus the Buffalo Bills that we kind of saw coming, while the Browns 4-6, winning versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. But at what cost is Myles Garrett out indefinitely, their best defensive player? No questions about that. He's not going to be available for the rest of the season. And as far as the spread goes here, minus 10.5, the Browns are favored, as they should be. But I will pose this question: should that spread be this high? And are you comfortable with that, considering you know how inconsistent this Browns team has been? Now, favorably for the Browns, they've got the ultimate trump card because they get to face the Dolphins defense. And I expect big days here from guys like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think Baker Mayfield will have a good day, but what quarterback that's faced the Dolphins defense hasn't? However, on the other side of the football, with Myles Garrett gone, what can we really expect from this Browns defense? And Ryan Fitzpatrick, as hot and cold as he can be, he keeps his team in these games. And I think the Dolphins hang in there. I don't think they're going to get blown out by 2 touchdowns, by 3 touchdowns. I think it'll be right around 10 points. I think this is a perfectly set line. And I like the Dolphins to go ahead, hang in there. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think they're going to lose. That defense can't really stop anyone, and it puts too much pressure on the offense game in and game out. And Fitzpatrick isn't elite enough to go ahead and get them out of that type of hole consistently. But, don't give Baker Mayfield too much credit. He's good for a turnover or 2 from time to time. So, like I said, even though the Browns, to me, clearly the better team and the one that should win, look for the Dolphins to go ahead and surprise some people on the spread. Next up, we've got the Detroit Lions at the Washington Redskins. The Lions 3-6-1, even though they lost last week versus the Cowboys. Very commendable performance, especially considering Matthew Stafford was out. Offensively, they got in the end zone and they gave the Cowboys all they wanted and more. Now, the Redskins 1-9, as we predicted, they lost versus the Jets. But I think to nobody's surprise, that's going to be the expectation moving forward with Haskins under center. Now, if Case Keenum was here playing, I think he's obviously the best quarterback the Redskins have. And with him under center offensively, I would take the Redskins. I'd pick them to win this game, especially with Stafford expected to continue to miss some time and with being the Driscoll show. But with Haskins there, with him leaving, a little bit to be desired as an accurate passer, I go advantage Lions. I think the Lions have way more playmakers. The only position you can go ahead and make some quips about that is the running back position. But to me, Driscoll with guys like Golladay, with guys like Marvin Jones, Hawkinson, advantage Detroit Lions. And for the Redskins, it's going to have to be the rushing show tandem of Adrian Peterson and Darius Geis. I don't have any faith in Haskins or any of those pass catchers. Now, favorably, the Lions have not been good defensively against the rush or otherwise. So maybe, the Redskins have some type of chance. But again, I think if the Lions come out with an early lead versus this Washington defense, it's very possible. Haskins has to kind of abandon the rushing attack. It's going to be a long day for the Redskins, and that's why I'm picking the Lions here to win. The spread plus 3.5 for the Redskins, probably a little bit lower because you've got 2 backup quarterbacks in there, 2 underachieving teams. But the Lions should cover this spread. As long as Haskins continues to be under center, I think the Redskins aren't going to be in all that many close games, win or lose. So for that reason, Lions outright and on the spread. Moving on, we have got the Oakland Raiders at the New York Jets. The Raiders 6-4, coming off that close victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. Then the Jets 3-7. Great performance versus the Washington Redskins. We saw Sam Darnold have a pretty good outing, 4 touchdowns, and the Jets earned that 3rd victory of the season. And that's what we said. Look for the Jets to potentially make a little bit of a run here with some favorable matchups defensively. And honestly, if I had to pick a game out of the handful that we have in Week 12 that are going to be close, this is the one that I'm circling as a potential trap game. Because the Raiders were lucky to get a victory last week versus the Bengals. They didn't look all that good, and the Bengals hung in there. This Jets team is a lot better, at least I'll say they have more weapons offensively. Even though they're very hot and cold, we've seen them explode offensively. They've definitely got the guys to get it done. It just matters what type of outing Sam Darnold will have. Will it be the Sam Darnold of last week or the Sam Darnold that was throwing picks left and right from a couple of weeks ago? Because there's still Robbie Anderson, there's Jamison Crowder, there's Le'Veon Bell. So you've got plenty of options offensively. And then the Oakland Raiders, also one of these teams that kind of play up to the level of their competition. So I don't think either way you look at this is going to be a blowout. And that's somewhat accurate reflected by the spread, only plus 2.5 when you look at the spread for the Jets. You would expect that number to probably be a little bit bigger considering the difference in records here and where these two teams stand as far as rankings are concerned. So even though the Raiders probably the safer choice outright, and don't get me wrong, that's what I'm going to go with because advantage quarterback position Raiders by far. Derek Carr has had a pretty good season. Sam Darnold, way too inconsistent. But again, if there was a team to potentially kind of have a letdown game here, I do think it's the Raiders because at the same time, I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. So the Jets, I believe they hang in there, and I'm actually going to go ahead, even though I like the Raiders outright, I'm going to take the Jets on the spread. With the potential they have offensively, especially, I like them there. Next, we've got the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints in what I think will be one of the most straightforward games of the week. The Panthers 5-5 as they continue to string together losses. Last week, an absolute demoralizing defeat versus the Atlanta Falcons, where they got smacked. And Kyle Allen continues to show that he's pretty much a fraud at the quarterback position, and that Panthers fans shouldn't be getting excited about the prospects of having him be that starting quarterback because offensively, I've said it since Cam Newton went out, this team is not the same, doesn't have the same type of ceiling, and can't contend with upper echelon teams like it could with Cam Newton, even though he had his fair share of issues as well. Simply put, Kyle Allen right now for way too turnover prone. With him under center, this team is way too one-dimensional. It's the Christian McCaffrey show. That's all it is. And if this team goes down early, like we saw versus the Falcons, as good as McCaffrey is, even though he's an MVP consideration, he is not good enough to go ahead and dig single-handedly the Panthers out of this hole. And boy, it's going to be a long day here versus the New Orleans Saints, who took care of business versus the Bucs. And I think this could be the biggest blowout of Week 12 because at home, with that offense getting right for the Saints, and with the Saints pretty much dominating the Panthers for a couple years straight, that's been that historical run for the Saints. You know, they've taken care of business versus the Panthers. Defensively, probably going to get Marshawn Lattimore back. That's going to be a big boost for that defense. And I think this defense will absolutely feast. I think it's going to have a huge day. I think Kyle Allen is going to have, another 2, 3, maybe even 4 turnover type of game here. I'd be shocked if the Panthers get over 13, 14 points in this game. I could see something in the realms of 30-10, 30-16 type of win for the Saints. I think Kamara, Breeze, Michael Thomas will continue to shine for New Orleans. Give me the Saints here all day long. No questions about it. One of our easiest locks of the week outright. On the spread, -9.5. That spread should be higher. I'll take the Saints there as well. No doubt. Moving on, we've got the Seattle Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Seahawks 8-2 coming off the bye week, while the Eagles 5-5. Tough loss versus the New England Patriots, where they hung in there. They had a chance, but ultimately, I do believe the better team won. And for the Eagles, they've just been really hard hit offensively, especially at the pass catcher position with injuries. Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey. We'll see whether Jeffrey plays or not this week, but I do think his presence would be a huge benefit for the Eagles. Jordan Howard nicked up. That's why the Jay Ajayi signing took place for the Eagles. But to me, for the Eagles to hang in there, they're going to have to rely on the arm of Carson Wentz here, and we're going to have to see a vintage game from a guy like Zach Ertz because we know what to expect from Russell Wilson and from guys like Tyler Lockett, Metcalf, Chris Carson, even though the Eagles defensively have done a great job stopping opposing rushers. So, I wouldn't be all that excited for Chris Carson's prospects in this game. I think it's going to come down to Russell Wilson's arm yet again, and he can definitely have success versus this Eagles secondary. That has been a theme so far in the season. Now, still, however, the Eagles, with Wentz under center, they play other teams tough, with the exception of a game here or there. And even versus elite competition, they have been in those games. See the Packers, see the Patriots. They've given those teams a scare, and, they even beat the Green Bay Packers. So credit to them there. So, to some degree, the fact that the Eagles are favored at -1.5 does make sense. It's in Philly. Seattle has to travel all the way there. But the Seahawks have been good on the road this year. And with Russell Wilson, MVP form, I've said it before, I'll continue to say it. If I could pick one quarterback in the NFL today, fourth quarter, late, one final drive that has to get it done, I'm taking Russell Wilson. I love what he can do in and out of the pocket. He is absolutely elite when it comes to fourth quarter comebacks as well. And if it does come to that, I give the advantage to Russell Wilson. And I do think this will be a close game with both teams having a chance to win. So because of that, I do think my aforementioned statement will hold. Russell Wilson barely over Carson Wentz. Seahawks outright on the spread. I will also take Seattle as the Eagles are favored. Next, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars 4-6, the Titans 5-5. And this is a very similar contest to, I think, the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. These two teams have played already, both vying for potentially second or third spot in the division. And so far, the first contest, the Jaguars won that game. Now the Titans at home, I think it'll be a split. I think they will go ahead and avenge their loss earlier on in the season. The Jaguars at 4-6 obviously got kind of blown out last week with the return of Nick Foles being overshadowed by that tough loss versus the Colts. While the Titans 5-5, coming off the bye week, last time we saw them, they had a huge victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. And now returning, they might be riding a little bit high. We'll see. That's why I don't feel too confident in this pick one way or the other. I think it's going to, again, be one of those coin flip type of games. But I'm going to give the slight edge for the Titans here because offensively, they have looked better with Ryan Tannehill under center. And defensively, maybe give them the slight edge as well, even though they've been up and down as well. But again, at home, I give the slight edge to the Tennessee Titans. I think Nick Foles here is still a little bit rusty. I think that's what's going to be the biggest thing for me. Obviously, last week, he did have some success, but the Jaguars struggled to get the football into the end zone, and I think that can be the MO here. I think this will be a lower scoring game. It's a divisional clash. These two teams know each other. So I don't think it's going to be all that exciting. I don't think there's going to be all that many points put up. I'm going to go ahead and take the Texans outright. The spread -3.5. I've been going back and forth on this, and the way I feel about it, latest inclination, I'm going with the Jaguars on the spread. I'm hedging my bets with the Titans outright, so we'll go with the Jaguars on the spread. Next, we've got the Dallas Cowboys at the New England Patriots. The Cowboys 6-4. Nice little win over the Detroit Lions. They had a great day offensively. Zeke bounced back. Dak was great. But facing the New England Patriots is different than facing the Detroit Lions. And speaking of the Patriots, they are at 9-1 after a great win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Tom Brady, the offense kind of struggled a little bit. It was a Julian Edelman touchdown pass that, was the difference maker in that game. But the defense showed up. They bounced back after that defeat versus the Baltimore Ravens. And right now, I think they're going to do it again versus the Dallas Cowboys. Look, for me, the thing that I keep going back to with the Cowboys is offensively, sure, they looked good last week. And sure, Dak has looked good in a handful of games. But you look at those opponents. You look at the defensive type of performances those teams had. And consistently, you will see they were not good defensively. And in fact, they're not all that good teams, especially on the defensive side of things. The New England Patriots, however, a whole nother story. They're an elite defense, one of the best in the NFL, if not the best. I think the Cowboys are really going to struggle here. Zeke, he's been good, similar to Dak Prescott versus weak defenses, but I think he can be stopped. We saw him be stopped versus the Minnesota Vikings a couple weeks ago. The Patriots take away your best player. To me, that's Zeke. Maybe it'll be Amari Cooper in this game. Either way, a guy like Gilmore will be able to shut down Cooper, in my opinion. And the Cowboys' defense, they've been hot and cold. The Detroit Lions, just put up a bunch of points against them. I think the Patriots can go ahead and have some success there. I really don't think this will be all that close. I think as the game goes on, the Patriots pull away. I think we see Tom Brady fix some of those offensive issues that he's been complaining about. I think the Patriots win. I think they win convincingly. I love them outright on the spread, -6.5. I think it should be higher. No way the Cowboys roll up into New England in Foxborough and get this win. Patriots outright and on the spread. Getting to Sunday Night Football, we have got the Green Bay Packers at the San Francisco 49ers. The Packers 8-2 coming off the bye week, while the 49ers 9-1 coming off another close win over the Arizona Cardinals. And all of a sudden, quietly, the 49ers haven't looked as unbeatable as their league best record would indicate. Now, it took some late game heroics from Jimmy Garoppolo last week for the 49ers to pull it out, and then for a pretty much garbage time defensive score as well to really make that score look not as close as the game would indicate. But this is going to be a tougher opponent with the Green Bay Packers coming into town. I think it's going to be a similar type of contest with what they faced versus the Seattle Seahawks, who handed them their first loss of the season. And the problem for the 49ers is that if they go ahead and fall in a hole early offensively, do you rely on Jimmy Garoppolo? How confident are you in him? Obviously, he's a good quarterback. He's a good game manager. He's an average quarterback. But Aaron Rodgers or Jimmy Garoppolo? Aaron Rodgers all day long. And I think that's what this game comes down to. I expect the 49ers defense to have some success, maybe even get a defensive score. But hell, that's what happened versus the Seattle Seahawks. And Seattle still found a way to get that victory. I think the Packers have a slightly better defense than that of the Seattle Seahawks. And offensively, they're just as good. Aaron Rodgers, that great rushing attack, Devontae Adams back. I'm going to go ahead and take the Green Bay Packers to get this victory. To me, ultimately, it comes down to the two quarterbacks. Who would you rather have, Rodgers or Jimmy Garoppolo? Who do you have more faith in to lead their team back from a deficit? Aaron Rodgers, yet again. So give me the Packers on the road. I think, don't get me wrong, it's going to be a very hard-fought, competitive game. I think it'll be close heading into the fourth quarter, but Rodgers over Jimmy Garoppolo in that crunch time. And with Robbie Gould potentially not being there, we've seen some kicker issues from the 49ers. We saw them cost them the opportunity to win versus the Seahawks in overtime. So again, another reason why I like the Packers to get that win outright. On the spread, 49ers favored at -3.5, so Packers there as well. Finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we have got the Baltimore Ravens at the LA Rams. The Ravens 8-2 after absolutely dismantling the Houston Texans. While the LA Rams 6-4, they took care of business versus the lonely Chicago Bears as that offense outplayed Mitch Trubisky and Matt Nagy's unit. But facing the Chicago Bears offense is one thing, and facing the Lamar Jackson-led Baltimore offense is a whole nother story. Lamar Jackson, absolutely incredible last week as he jumped ahead in MVP conversation after yet another great outing. And even though the Rams defense has been, pretty much the unit that has been keeping them in a lot of games with guys like Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, it's going to be tough for them to stop Lamar Jackson. And offensively, I got to give the edge to the Ravens because even though the Rams do have some nice pieces and they could potentially slow down Jackson for a while, can they really contain him for the entirety of the game? And then can Jared Goff keep up pace with the big play abilities that the Ravens have? Because he's been one of these quarterbacks that has been very disappointing this season. But There's a couple reasons why. Obviously, issues on the offensive line, a lot of injuries there. Guys in and out at the wide receiver position, Brendan Cooks, Robert Woods. Even though Cooks is tentatively expected to be available for this game, we'll see about Robert Woods. He was a late subtraction from that lineup last week, kind of unexpected. But really, the storyline I think here for the Rams is the two new additions on the offensive line kind of gave them a big boost, and Todd Gurley had one of his best games of the season as he found a lot of lanes in that first half versus the Bears. Will he be able to do it again? Because I still believe that this Rams offense, in order for it to hit the type of success that it had these last couple of years, Todd Gurley has to be the focal point. And I'm not sure whether versus this improving Baltimore Ravens defense, if Todd Gurley will be able to have that same type of success, especially if the Ravens jump out to a lead, which I think is very possible. What I'm trying to say is I like the Ravens to win this game. Lamar Jackson over Jared Goff all day long. I'm taking the Ravens outright on the road. The Rams on the spread plus 3.5. I think the Ravens can go ahead, if they win by at least a touchdown. So I will take the Ravens on the spread too. So with that, we wrap up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. I said it before, I could see the Bengals kind of creeping up on the Steelers, but ultimately, I still think the Steelers defense will be the difference maker. We've seen them do it before. I'm going to go ahead and pick them to win this game. It'll probably be lower scoring. It'll probably be ugly, but the Steelers should eke out the victory. Then Miami at the Cleveland Browns. Give me the Browns. As unimpressive as they have been all season long, as hot and cold as they have been, they are facing the Miami defense. I think with guys like Chubb, Hunt, Odell, Jarvis Landry, they will all have significant roles on Sunday. I like them to win that game. Next, Carolina at the New Orleans Saints. This is my easiest no-brainer lock of the week. The first two, maybe you don't quite agree on, fine. But this one is a absolute lock. The Saints in New Orleans will beat the Panthers. Kyle Allen versus this tough defense. The first time he's really playing in this type of environment at New Orleans where the Saints have something to play for. I'm taking the Saints here. No-brainer. Then Dallas at the New England Patriots. Another very confident lock here. Dak in Foxborough versus an elite defense. I don't think the Cowboys have as much success as they had last week. The Patriots get another victory. So with that, we wrap up our locks as well. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree with these picks, along with any other questions you guys might have? I will do my best to answer them. And as always, if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Like we said before, you can go ahead, become a part of the free newsletter for early exclusive content like these game breakdowns. Become a member for personalized fantasy advice. All the details in the description. But for now, I'll see you guys in future videos.